What is up, guys? Welcome to my review for The Flash, Season 6, Episode 3, titled Dead Man Running. For the reviews of this season, I go over the Crisis stuff first, which for this episode is practically every storyline except for what's to do with Ralph and Deborah, as even the storyline with Iris, Cisco, and this new Harrison Wells is apparently setting up for the Crisis, as apparently this version of Harrison Wells, who is Nash Wells, is going to have a fairly large role in the Crisis, and it doesn't seem like he's pariah either. So I'll go over the Crisis, Barry, Caitlin stuff, and then also the Iris, Cisco, Allegra, Nash stuff, and then in the end, the storyline with Ralph and his mother, Deborah. So let's begin with the Crisis on Infinite Earth setup from this episode, involving Barry, Frost, as well as Ramsey Rosso. So the episode begins with Barry telling Hugh Flash about the coming crisis. I'm glad they just went into it straight away, right off the bat in this episode, with Barry telling them. However, he does leave out a very important detail about the fact that he needs to die to save the universe, and he does tell them in the end of the episode. I'll obviously get to that at the end of this part of this review, talking about this storyline. But this storyline I thought was pretty damn good. At least in parts it was good. Other parts it was good, but not exactly great. While there are parts that I really liked it, the storyline does continue with Barry investigating a murder involving dark matter theft, and he's on this CSI case. And one thing I don't really understand is why Frost is there, and apparently she renamed herself Frost, something that Caitlin did do in the comics. So actually I do like this rename, because Killer Frost is a name that not only has not made sense since she turned into a hero, but I don't think she's ever killed anybody, so that name never really made any sense anyway. So I'm glad they're renaming her to Frost. But I don't understand, one thing I don't understand is why she's on the CSI case. She's not a CSI, and this is official police business, so I don't understand why she's there, other than for her, because she's the only one who knows about Ramsey Rosso, and also the only person that knows that Ramsey Rosso is after dark matter, and would do something like this to get it, so that's why they put her there. But I don't, maybe they explained this, maybe I missed something, but I don't know why she was there on that CSI case. So then Barry and Frost go to confront Rosso, because Frost thinks that he was the one who killed that person to steal that dark matter. Now, I gotta say, this first meeting between Barry and Rosso, while not exactly the craziest main villain, main hero meeting we've ever seen, in fact, it's probably the least crazy. It's the first time that happened without that villain actually already being a villain, I'm pretty sure. So, it's different, but it's crazy how much more I became interested in Ramsey's storyline with the meeting with Barry and Ramsey. In this entire episode, I was so much more interested in Ramsey Rosso as a character, as a villain, and his rivalry with Barry than I ever did in episode 1 or 2, as all those scenes and storylines in those episodes just felt like they were set up. Well, in this episode, it felt like that's what they were setting up, this confrontation between Ramsey and Barry, and I think it enhanced his storyline and my interest in the character a lot more, making me a lot more excited than I was last week for this little storyline, this mini storyline, what the showrunners calling it, graphic novel number 1 of season 6, where Ramsey Rosso is the main villain. So then Ramsey says that he got dark matter from Ted Kord, a cool reference to that character, a character who's been referenced for a very long time now. I think like ever since season 1 of Arrow, maybe season 2 of Arrow. I mean, he's been referenced a lot, and he needs to appear, and, Blue Beetle would be really cool to see on one of these shows. But then Ramsey joins their investigation. So after Ramsey joins their investigation, the Flash and Frost find themselves in a fight with Mitch Romero. Now, I'm not exactly a fan of zombie villains. I don't think they make for good villains, because they're just, they're cannon fodder, and that's it. They don't have motivations or lines or anything. They're not characters. They're just monsters, and I don't think the more interesting monsters. So Mitch Romero here, I don't think ended up being a very good villain. However, I do think where they're going with the character, or where they went with the character, and how that fits into Bloodwork, I am glad that they put him here, and it just means that this episode has a fairly not terrible, but just not good villain. And while it will enhance future episodes quite possibly with Bloodwork, this episode specifically I don't think has a very good villain. But this fight itself, not exactly what I would call a good fight either. The only good part about this fight is visually it looks pretty cool, but only because of the costumes. Flash's costume is amazing. I think I like it I like it more and more every single time I see it, and I think it might surpass the Season 4 costume as my favorite costume of The Flash, but also my favorite costume in the Arrowverse. Similarly, Frost's costume is, I think, miles, like it's infinitely better than any costume she's had before, and the two standing side by side, the red and the blue, they clash so well with each other, making this scene actually visually pretty good. And I think that if we ever see them again, obviously we will, in some sort of scene wearing their costumes, then it will look pretty good. And I think that just already visually this season looks so much better than Season 5, where scenes like this one, which I don't think was a good fight overall, and again, I don't think the villain was very good, still looks pretty good because the costumes are really, really cool. So then Ramsey goes to Star Labs, in which he attempts to steal some dark matter, and Barry catches him. I really like what they did there, kind of like avoiding a cliche of somebody walking out the room while another person tries to steal something, but then Barry walks right in because he suspects something of Ramsey. I really like that moment, but that's nothing compared to what we get right after that, where Barry and Ramsey arguing about Ramsey using the dark matter, arguing about fighting death versus embracing it. It seems like Barry's more embracing it, while Ramsey is really set on fighting it, and that's something that his mother didn't do. I think this scene is incredible. Like, legitimately, this episode I thought was good, but these couple minutes where Ramsey tries to steal the dark matter and then argues with Barry about that and also death, and then also Barry running in the speed lab thinking about telling the rest of Team Flash the fact that he is going to die, I think that for those couple minutes this episode was legitimately incredible. This argument between Ramsey and Barry, like this argument of this clash of ideas more than an actual fight, which we're obviously going to see actual fights, but this I think is so cool. It's probably even better than the actual fights. We saw something similar with Barry and DeVoe in the second to last episode of that season, and that was the only time, like really the only time we ever got that. I'm hoping in the next couple episodes we get more of these arguments between Barry and Ramsey, these clashes of ideas, kind of like good versus evil, but it's more gray than that. It's not exactly black and white, but I already love the rivalry between Barry and Ramsey. I think Ramsey's actor is incredible in this episode, or maybe not incredible, but he's really, really good, and he has the potential to be an incredible villain. So from this scene, from this episode in general, again, like I said earlier, I'm much more excited for Bloodwork's storyline, but I think for these couple of minutes, the Flash in this episode was legitimately incredible. So then after Barry and Frost train, Frost reveals why she's been acting so weird, as she's scared of dying because she just started her life. This was fun, it was a good moment, it was a storyline that ended up, I think, being pretty good, but I think the friendship between Barry and Caitlin, or Barry and Frost in this episode, was really good, and I enjoy the fact that they highlighted that. It's something that they really have never done before. With Barry and Caitlin they have, but not with Barry and Killer Frost, or now Frost, and I think that definitely did work. Then Romero actually attacks Ramsey, but then listens to his commands and then does everything he does. These couple of minutes where they were with Romero and Ramsey, those were the only time in the episode that I did like Romero as a villain or as a concept, because of how intriguing it was with Dr. Ramsey and how that was working. But then Barry and Caitlin, or Barry and Frost, I have to get used to calling her Frost and not Caitlin while I call him Barry, not the Flash. But the two do take down Romero by overdosing him on as much dark matter as they could find, which is all the dark matter in that briefcase. But I thought this fight scene was fine, just like the earlier one. It was good, but visually it was a lot better than it had any right to be. With the first one, it was because of the costumes, and while this one didn't have the costumes, it was because of the lighting in the room that made it, I think, visually pretty interesting. And I'm so glad that they got back to the good visuals of the show that I think Season 4 had. Season 5 was lacking incredibly, but this season, because of the lighting, because especially the costumes, I'm really excited to see the visuals in the season, among other things. So after that, Barry does throw Frost a birthday party, which it's fine. I mean, it's a good scene, I guess, but obviously what comes after that is what is an actually great scene, as Caitlin does go to the balcony to talk to Barry and realizes that he's never talked about his life after the crisis, knowing or confirming that he knows that he is going to die. Then Barry and Iris tell Team Flash about the only timeline where the universe is saved being the one where he dies, and we get a little bit of reaction from them, but I am definitely really really excited to see their reactions in terms of their actual storylines in the next episode. But also I'm really excited to see Bloodwork in the next episode. The next episode is titled There Will Be Blood, and as we saw in this episode, Bloodwork got a basically got an upgrade, and it seems like he's becoming more Bloodwork than Ramsey Rosso. So I'm definitely excited to see that in the next episode, along with the Halloween theme the next episode does have. But overall, this storyline was really good. It had its ups and downs. Some things I didn't love, some things I did love. However, there was definitely one part of the episode, one part of this storyline that was incredible, the argument between Barry and Ramsey. So overall, a great storyline. So let's move on to the next two. So like I said, the other storyline introducing the new Harrison Wells does have a connection to the Crisis, as apparently this Wells, who is again, like I said, apparently not actually Pariah, is going to have a role in the Crisis, a fairly large one, and actually there were set photos showing him on the set of it. I don't mean Tom Cavanaugh, I mean Tom Cavanaugh in the Nash wardrobe, but in this storyline we get introduced to this new character. Allegra shows Iris a picture of this new Harrison Wells, and she thinks that Harrison Wells is now alive, and then Iris begins to investigate this. This does lead to another side storyline with Allegra, and I'll get to that in a second, but Iris does bring Cisco into this, as Cisco does have a connection to every Harrison Wells that we've ever seen, and then there's this confirmation. Iris tases him, and then later, we actually get to meet this new Harrison Wells. So Cisco says that this new Harrison Wells is named Nash, and then he does wake up, and then he does introduce himself, or at least we got to see some of his personality. He seems like he's an adventurer. He's been compared to Indiana Jones by the showrunner or somebody behind the show. I don't remember who it was, but that definitely is the case, and I already do think that he's going to be a very interesting character. He's definitely very different from the other Harrison Welleses, which is always the case. I mean, Tom Cavanaugh is the master of playing characters who look exactly the same, however, they act and feel and are very, very different. So I'm definitely interested in seeing this new Harrison Wells and what he brings to the picture, especially since he's connecting to the Crisis. Now, he says that he's looking for something called the Eternium. I've never heard of something like that. However, it's apparently this incredibly minor thing that doesn't even have an image in the DC Wiki, but it was introduced in a Legion of Superheroes storyline and has a connection to Shazam. Now, Shazam has not been referenced very much. He hasn't really been confirmed to exist, so I guess this is a interesting reference to that character. While the Legion, they obviously appeared in Earth 38, but also they apparently have a counterpart in Earth 1 in the 2040s or something. One of the members is Lightning Lad, another one was Excess. However, she doesn't exist anymore. But anyway, this is an interesting storyline, and I'm guessing, or an interesting reference, and I'm guessing the Eternium will have a connection to the Crisis, so because of that, I'm obviously a lot more interested in it, and I'm a lot more excited for Nash as a character and his storyline, as in the end, he actually finds the Eternium beneath Central City, which is the ending scene, the end credit scene of this episode. Because of that, it's definitely going to be very, very important. So that was actually a pretty good storyline. I didn't really like the Allegra parts. I don't think she needed to be a character in the storyline, nor does she really need to be a character on this show. However, I did really like the new Harrison Wells, and the Eternium, it's definitely very intriguing, and the Crisis setup is pretty cool. With that in mind, let's move on to the Ralph Deborah storyline, which was technically the only part of the storyline that wasn't involving the Crisis. Also, it kind of feels like a filler storyline that they put in there just to fill the time. Even like, in spite of this, I actually kind of liked it, and it had some pretty interesting moments, as well as character development for Ralph. And honestly, I'm not going to add anything more to that. That's really the extent of my opinion on the storyline. It wasn't necessary, and I didn't love it. However, the character development it gave to Ralph, I think, definitely was pretty good. So in conclusion, this episode I thought was practically equal to the last episode, as it did have some things I didn't love. However, the things that I did really like definitely were really great, as, like I said a couple times already, for a couple minutes of this episode, it was incredible, while the rest of it was either really good, or at least a little good. So I'll give this episode, like I gave the last one, an 8.5 out of 10, and I think that these two episodes are practically equal, with I think this episode being maybe slightly better. So, you know, this episode has like a 8.53 out of 10, while that one has an 8.51 or 2 out of 10 or something like that. It doesn't really matter. This episode gets an 8.5. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought about this episode in the comments, or I already said that, but if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.